Hello everyone, and welcome to this audio podcast aligned to the LabZtorm Impact v.3. This is an audio podcast aligned to research and works that are surrounding nephrology and what, if any, are the healthcare educational needs for patients with chronic kidney disease or CKD. This is an audio podcast aligned to a storm robotics blockade and aligned to and an audio podcast aligned to another storm robotics production. This audio podcast in following introductory aspects to this works and sort of the aims and the aims and objectives and sort of the main sort of question or research question in around this works. This will now this audio podcast will now sort of delve into sort of some aspects surrounding sort of methodology, looking at the methodology and sort of the ethics application or approval aspects in around this research. So in around the methodology, the research there was a research scientist investigator involved in this research had the focus on the role of a facilitator, and thus adjusting a use of sort of topic guides to effectively involve participants to involve participants as part of the sort of qualitative aspects of this works and this research. At times this required the research scientist investigator to also play a slightly more professional role, thus providing a background of research to fulfill inclusion and exclusion criteria, so thus to help inform a sort of sequence of activities. The justification for using sort of a qualitative methodology in the main was that the design or the qualitative methodology design allowed to help answer sort of multifaceted questions in line to sort of the overarching sort of question around what if any are the healthcare educational needs for CKD patients. And at the same time, similar methodologies have also been used or implemented to sort of help answer questions relating to healthcare education. And there are works that will be put in social media for listeners to sort of for listeners to check out sort of further literature in around some of the resources. But suffice to say, there has been literature retrospectively to highlight that similar research has used qualitative methodology to help answer questions in relating to sort of healthcare and education, or healthcare education, and also aligned to sort of public health, aligned to public health, and also some aspects aligned to research around healthcare in around different specialties and disciplines. And through co-development, the research scientist investigator in this work, in line to this works, also organized sort of two high street two high street workshops in a southwest city in the United Kingdom in May 2019 and June 2019, and aligned to patient and public involvement, or what's been referred in literature as as PPI. Aligned to patient and public involvement, or PPI, which was sort of an important mechanism as well. Involving patients had led to achieving a sort of achieving a rigor throughout this works. And as part of this investigation, as part of this research or this works, 13 team members and 7 admin members from the RPSG on behalf of the RPSG, the Renal Patient Support Group, and 6 members, sort of team members on behalf of the Kidney Disease and Renal Support Group, or KDARs for kids, attended the two different workshops. Basic evaluation and feedback provided an understanding of patients' perspectives surrounding access to healthcare education, to focus the aims and objectives sort of surrounding this work and this research. At the same time, the workshops were co-developed between patients, researcher, and co-founders of the two social media platforms, thus being the RPSG and KDARs. And following workshops, a topic tagging activity had been implemented between the two social media platforms. In following the workshops, a third renal workshop event also took place in collaboration between the RPSG and KDARs in October 2019, where topics between the two global social media platforms were then co-developed, having understood the sort of aims and remit of the two social media platforms, and again, thus being the RPSG and KDARs. Tags aligned to topics were co-developed against 14 different topics, having investigated over 1 month. So sort of retrospectively and accordingly in around March 2020 and April 2020. Some of the most in line to some of the popular healthcare terminologies that are used or are used between sort of service users, that are used between the service users, and also used on and in between the two social media platforms. Topics were tagged applicably for 2 weeks per social media platform. So 2 weeks through the RPSG, which where the RPSG represents an adult renal or kidney population, and 2 weeks through KDARs, a social media platform representing a pediatric, online pediatric and young people cohort, and at the same time, topic tagging example was implemented following research. Was implemented following sort of research that has been outlined in literature, and again in online there will be some resources aligned to where listeners can check out some of the resources to find out works that are similar. In this works, in the full publication, there's an overview surrounding the topic, the topic tagging sort of activity that actually that actually shows or sort of illustrates sort of a basis in and around the topic, the different topics, and sort of the percentage in context of context the percentage of sort of where service users have used different terminologies and in context of the different topics, how service users, for example, find that how service users use the social media platforms in context of these topics, and which terminologies had been most sort of popular in context of healthcare, and in context of healthcare, and also in context of public health as well. So in line to this as well, a little bit around the ethics application and approval sort of process, since any research that's done from sort of a research ethos should have and has to have some aspects in around sort of the ethics application on approval an approval sort of basis. So some aspects in around this as part of this audio podcast as well. So the research proposal had undergone sort of both academic and National Health Service or NHS ethics approval process or processes, highlighting all aspects of the research. Aligned to this, General Data Protection Regulation or GDPR 2018 guidelines were implemented to ensure best practice surrounding confidentiality, data protection and compliancy. Information sheets and consent forms were produced to inform participants the intentions and outcomes aligned to this research or this works. And the according to Academic Ethics Committee according to an Academic Ethics Committee, and also NHS National Health Service ethics panel before starting any data collection and all other aspects of this research as well. The research protocol. There was a research protocol identification for this research and investigation, and where the research sort of identification details were linked to the Northwest Greater Manchester South Research Ethics Committee, and wherein the Greater Manchester South Research Ethics Committee had allocated a specific project or research ID in around this works. The ethics processes covered a broad focus, including robustness of research design, research integrity and transparency to ensure confidentiality and anonymity surrounding data protection, security, and also informed consent. Information sheets and consent forms were produced to inform potential participants the intentions and the outcomes aligned to this and around this research. a compulsory a compulsory documentation such as information all compulsory documentation such as information sheets, consent forms, introductory research flyers were all approved by the academic ethics committee and also the NHS National Health Service ethics approval since the works of this research was involved was research that involved both patients with chronic kidney disease, CKD, and also health professionals in context of allied health professionals as well. So this ends this audio podcast aligned to the sort of methodology and ethics application or approval process. The next audio podcast will delve into sort of the basis in around the qualitative data sort of integrity, reflexivity, and trustworthiness in around aspects of the data collection, in aspects around the data collection, and also some aspects in around some aspects in around sort of the data protection, GDPR 2018, and some aspects in around the privacy and the sort of storage aspects in around the data as well. So once again, this has been an audio podcast aligned to the LabZtorm Impact v.3 in around research surrounding nephrology. What if any other healthcare educational needs for patients with chronic kidney disease or CKD? This has been an audio podcast aligned to another Storm Robotics blockade, and this has been an audio podcast aligned to another Storm Robotics production. Thank you for tuning in.